Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
The day is finally here. The Eagles officially report to camp today. I know a lot of networks are calling it Training Camp Tuesday, with most of the league reporting today. So we're going to get into the key training camp storylines with the NFL insider himself, Adam Caplan, co-host of the Inside the Birds podcast. Of course, the latest pod dropped yesterday with Greg Cosell. Amazing insights from Cosell with him and Mosher and Caplan on the pod. And, of course, Adam Caplan joins us here on the Sports Bash. Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. Adam, how you doing today?
Joshua Henning III, good to be with you, my friend. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back with you here. I start my training camp tour tomorrow, my long tour, which is about 3 weeks. It starts with the Eagles, actually, in South Philly. As you mentioned, they all reported today. They've got their big meeting tonight at 6 o'clock, and they had their conditioning test. So we'll see what happens with those results, but we'll go to training camp tomorrow, and then they have a walkthrough on Thursday, Josh. One day practice, and it's going to be like the first day as always, and then they have a walkthrough on Thursday. It's funny how things have changed.
It definitely has changed a lot, and it's not just, people always say, Adam, oh, the world was so different 20 years ago. It's like, no, it's just like 10 years ago it was different.
Yeah, really, it would actually go back to the 2011 CBA. That's when the players got what they wanted, less practice time. They can't be asked to do anything before mid-April. Even if a coach sees a player in the building, you can only say hi. They can't talk football. It's kind of absurd, but that's the rules, and the NFL owners were happy with that. It had nothing to do with paying them, so they were happy with that. And away we go. The Eagles are running sort of what I call the Rams camp East, because the Rams are the ones who are the best with injury in the National Football League, and they have the shortest practices, and the Eagles are now not far behind.
Well, Adam, you just said they gave the players what they want. Let's give the people out there listening what they want, because we know that whether it's Eagle fans or whether it's people who want to know about their fantasy football team, The question every year is always the quarterback. Jalen Hurts, year 2 as the full-time starter for many people. This is the number one story for Eagles camp.
It is. There's no question about it. And you hear us, Josh. You talked about our show Inside the Birds. We did it with Greg Cosell from NFL Films, and Greg did a phenomenal job of breaking down Hurts' third down tape. And to get that information, you got to listen to the show. But I would tell you, doing that show with him recently, that he certainly was a little bit more positive than I expected, because Greg's job is just to go strictly by the tape, nothing else. And he was not very complimentary of him during our pregame show last year with Jason Avant, Jeff Mosher, and I. And the fact that he was a little bit more positive was a good sign. Look, it's only coaching tape. He doesn't care what anyone else has to say. He just goes by what he sees, and he let nothing else influence. So I thought that was a good sign coming off of that. And we had reported a couple months ago that Hurts' timing was much better in OTAs, and you can't get rushed in OTAs. Now, in training camp, you absolutely can get rushed, but you cannot touch the quarterback. But still, it's a pass rush. And I'm going to be interested when I see tomorrow. I don't know how hard they're going to practice. It's generally very light the first practice, but I'll be back probably on Saturday and a couple more times. As the month of August progresses, once we get out of this weekend's end of July, I'm interested to see how he stacks practices and how consistent he can be, because last summer, Josh, to be quite honest, he did not have a very good training camp. And I know that was just his first full-time training camp as a starter, but he's got to be better, and the expectation is this time around he will be better.
Now, one of the big things that stands out to me, Adam, something that you and Jeff talked about on the podcast, is year 2 for Jalen Hurts as a starter is also year 2 with the same play caller for the first time since high school, and that play caller is Shanesteichen.
Yeah, and I believe that Nick Sirianni, one of the reasons, he had his reasons for doing this, but one of the reasons why he didn't take back the play calling is to not continue to yo-yo Hurts in terms of who's going to call the plays and who's going to be that voice in his ear. Shanesteichen, he did a very good job with the Chargers. He called plays for about a year and a half for them. So he's done it before. He started around midseason. We don't know the exact game that he started taking over the play calling, but he closed the season as a play caller. He's been a play caller in the off season, and he's going to be in training camp in this season for the full time. Now, it's not like Sirianni won't have a say. He will. It's his offense. But it's great that Hurts gets to keep the continuity. That's very important. Talk to any quarterback, and they will tell you continuity is absolutely key in development at being a starting quarterback, and that's a big thing. There's no question about it. And Steichen did a good job. The question, though, going forward will be, will the offensive scheme change at all?
Now, what do you believe that Steichen brings to this offense as a play caller in year two? Because when he was, as you mentioned, with the Chargers, that was a very different situation and a different quarterback he was dealing with.
Yeah, now, what we should mention, Josh, is that Steichen, the Chargers did not have a power running game. Austin Eckler was their main back.
Right.
He's a smaller back. He's not a guy who's going to handle more than maybe 10 to 12 carries. We're here, they're going to run the football, and Jalen Hurts was a major part of it starting in Week 6 last season. Now, the question would be, the scheme, they run what they run, but it's how they call it. Are they going to be a run-dominant offense? My sense is it won't be. Why do I say that? We know the ownership, Jeffrey Lurie, from what we understand, he didn't put any pressure on them. It was hands-off. He let them do what they wanted. This was not the pressure that he put on Doug Peterson to have a passing offense. But we know with the A.J. Brown trade, Josh, the Dallas Goedert extension over $14 million a year, A.J. Brown over $25 million a year, it'll never be acceptable for them to be a running offense. By money and by philosophy, this team believes heavily in analytics. They believe in throwing the football. Now, how much more will they throw it? That remains to be seen, but a lot of that has to do also if they're ahead in games.
You mentioned Austin Eckler. Well, there's a guy who, I think a lot of people out there could say there could be a similar role for him, and that is Kenny Gainwell. What do you think Gainwell can do for the Eagles in year two?
Yeah, this is really interesting. Kenny Gainwell was the guy that he was their main goal line back early in the season. It was really odd because no one knew that was coming, and it was not Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, as we know, incredibly did not even score a touchdown last season, which it's not good for a starting running back who was selected in the second round in 2019. But then we saw Jordan Howard get a run when they decided to take him out of mothballs. And then you saw Boston Scott when they had a bunch of injuries. He got a chance to play and did a great job. So overall, when you look at it, Gainwell's role is going to be mainly in the passing game, and we expect that. Look, we expect that his role is going to increase. He give you a little bit out of the slot, which he did in college. He could play outside if you need him to, which he did in college. But they need more explosive plays for him. And that, to me, Josh, and I understand, look, last season, no A.J. Brown. You had to deal with Zach Ertz until the trade deadline. That was not their plan, but they were unable to move him. That limited their explosive plays. Now you don't have to worry about that anymore. You've got A.J. Brown, who over the middle is almost impossible to cover. Devontae Smith, expect his average per catch number to go up. They will take some more shots downfield. We know Quez Watkins could flat out fly. Dallas Goedert down the seam. And then you put Kenny Gainwell in. And also, the pony formation. They could have Sanders and Gainwell. We know that they practiced this last summer, we were told. We didn't really see much of that last season, so maybe we see more of that. So I believe, Josh, this offense has a chance to be very dynamic, and they do not want the quarterback position to hold them back. Their mindset is that they're not going to let it, but if they start reining it in and becoming a running team again, that will not bode well for Jalen Hurts.
NFL insider Adam Caplan joining us today here on Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. You mentioned his name a couple times already, and that is A.J. Brown. What do you expect his impact will be on the Eagles' offense this season?
Massive, because one of the things that they struggled with, Josh, is they just did not have enough physicality at the wide receiver position last season. Devontae Smith, as well as he played as a rookie, is not physical as we know. He's not even 170 pounds. Quez Watkins is not physical. He could run. He does have some size, but he's not physical. What I find interesting is they added two very physical receivers. You mentioned A.J. Brown. He'll run those physical routes over the middle. It's called the Bang 8, off play action. as one Titan source told me, it's very hard to find on tape a route that he didn't win going over the middle. He's that physical. He gets so much leverage. And Zach Pascal, who's a physical run blocker and very good in the red zone, talking to an Eagles player recently who said that though they didn't really practice much 7-on-7, only did 2 weeks, he made an impact, particularly to that receiver room where they're very young, and that's what they needed. And Zach Pascal, he's one of these glue guys. It won't really show in the numbers because he's not going to start. He won't play a ton of snaps. But, he knows this offense, and he does the dirty work. This is a very important guy to what they're going to do this season, believe it or not.
One guy I think Eagle fans, as I mentioned earlier, fantasy football players want to see have a good season is Dallas Goedert. Is this the year he breaks out now that he's no longer in Zach Ertz's shadow for a full year?
Josh, you just hit on it. That is the key. Starting the season, yes. He had the 2 monster games back-to-back last season against the Jets with Gardner Minshew and the other one with Jalen Hurts against Washington. He has to build on that. No, he doesn't have to have monster games every week, and nobody does. But there's no reason he should have fewer than 6 pass targets per game. This is a guy, if he plays 17 games, I know with his injury history, it's probably unlikely. But, number one, he should have a minimum, if he plays 15 games, 60 catches. If by chance if he plays all 17 games, it would not shock me if he has over 80 receptions. He's a coverage nightmare. He's super athletic, a terrific blocker. He's a 3-down tight end. He just has never put it together, Josh, but this is his year too. Yeah, I do believe it'll be a breakout season.
You mentioned coverage. Let's flip it over to the defense for the Eagles. Are we expecting to see a scheme change for the Eagles defense this year? Did the offseason moves signal a transition for what Jonathan Gannon is going to call?
Yeah, so Josh, I know reporting, we put this out back during free agency in March. So we know they're going to run what we call a multiple defense. They really were not multiple last season despite what we saw in training camp. They ran generally, not always, but they generally ran a 5-2 front. I'm not saying they're junking it, but that will not be their main front. You're going to see some 3-4, some 4-3. We'll see about the 5-2. I don't know yet. But they're going to be more versatile because why? They have better talent. They didn't have Brandon Graham for most of the season. They got him back. When they run a 34, it'll be a stand-up linebacker as he was for Billy Davis under Chip Kelly. By the way, Brandon Graham, saw him a couple weeks ago at a golf event. He looks great. He's ready to go. You got Josh Sweat. He's played standing up last season. He did some standing up when they ran a 34. You've got Hassan Reddick, who will be a strong side linebacker when they run a 43 front. When they run a 34 front, it'll be a stand-up linebacker. He's going to be a pass rusher. Rarely will they ask them to cover. He's going to be great in this scheme. I really believe that. So the fronts will change, but it doesn't really matter whether they're 34, 43, or even a 5-2 because they're going to be way more multiple. Now the coverages, though, they're running a lot of what I'm told is Mike Zimmer's coverages. That's what they ran last year. They did not run anywhere close to his blitz package. It's completely different. But you're going to see a lot of – I still believe that there'll be more zone than man. But remember, Josh, they were the number one zone team for the first half of last season, 91%. Then the man coverage went way up. They'll build on that man coverage, but overall for Bradbury to be successful, they're going to have to run a decent amount of zone coverage.
Talk to me about the man who's also entering his second year, the defensive play caller, Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah, so just building on what we just talked about with Gannon, this is a big year for him. By far of all the coaches, not Sirianni, who did a very good job. Really, I don't say I was blown away by Sirianni, but I was very encouraged with. He gave up the play calling. He became more of what we call the CEO head coach. But the difference is, some CEO head coaches, like Tom Coughlin, were really not involved in the day-to-day play calling, where Sirianni will be heavily involved in the game planning and be in Steichen's ear about certain plays. So it's not like he won't be involved, but he's going to be an overview kind of coach. That's going to be good, and you'll see him, as I did in OTAs, go to station and getting on the players about fundamentals. That's great. That's a guy that's got his pulse of the team. But Jonathan Gannon's got to be more aggressive. I mean, it's not like I'm not talking about blitzing. I'm talking about in his coverages, disguise. The word I got is because with Steven Nelson, he was limited because he didn't run very well. He's also small. They felt a little bit limited. There's no question to me, and particularly when you play zone coverage, that's where you get your disguises. They've got to disguise more. They've got to show different looks, because the way I heard it is from other teams is they thought the Eagles defense, Josh, on tape was very predictable and easy to decipher. That cannot happen this season. It's got to change.
NFL insider Adam Caplan joining us here for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and InsideTheBirds.com. Adam, one of the universal things I've run into, I haven't found a single Eagles fan who isn't excited about Jordan Davis, the rookie. What kind of impact can he have this year? Yeah,
this is an interesting one. This is definitely a storyline, Josh, because we know that when they're in a 43 front, Cox and Hargrave are the two guys who are going to be in there. If they go to a 34 front, or they're strictly a run front, Jordan Davis has a very good chance of being in there. And look, Fletcher Cox also is not going to play the amount of snaps that he normally would have. And don't forget, Josh, they've got Milton Williams. We're told they still want to get a very good look at Marlon Tuipulotu, who barely played last season due to a severe hamstring injury, and he just was not in good enough shape during the season. He's good to go, so they're really deep at D-tackle. They want to take a look at Noah Ellis. They have good depth there. So in the end, Josh, Jordan Davis will not play a ton of snaps in year one, but there's certain things situationally that he can do. Now, in year two, Fletcher Cox could very well be gone. That would enable Jordan Davis to start. And don't forget, Javon Hargrave's contract is up, though we fully expect him to be back in 2023. This is the final year of his 3-year deal.
The next layer of that defense behind Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave is the linebackers. They drafted Nakobe Dean. They signed White. What can we expect from the linebackers? How much better can they be this year?
Major upgrade, Josh. And I was a friend of mine this season ticket. We were laughing. He goes, "Are they going to embarrass me again?" I go, "No, they're not. They're not at all. In fact, this is the best group they've had since 2018. In fact, maybe since 2017 in terms of youth, athleticism, and talent. Kaiser White, who started a bunch of games for the Chargers. I know he's smaller. You've got Reddick now. Again, he's just going to be a pass rusher. Technically, he'll be a linebacker, but he'll be a stand-up pass rusher. Nakobe Dean. See, here's the thing. Kyron Johnson will most likely be a special teams player, though he's very fast. Here's the thing we all have to understand, Josh. The Eagles have tremendous depth at linebacker for the first time in 4 years. Between T.J. Edwards, who I didn't even mention, who's really just a base-down player, who when they're going against like the Titans, you'll see him play more. When they're not, against teams that are pass, he'll barely play. The nickel linebackers, which will play mostly, are when it either week 1, week 2, week 3, whatever it's going to be, Nakobe Dean and Kaiser White will wind up being their two nickel linebackers in terms of coverage, and Reddick will be Reddick, one way or the other, will be an edge rusher, however they want to deploy him. But that's it. And Davion Taylor, unfortunately, he's been hurt a lot. What we're told is to kind of get the soft tissue injuries out of his system, he took up yoga. He's trying different approaches to getting himself healthy. But the bottom line is Davion Taylor's on the outside looking in the rotation. He's got to earn a spot in the rotation here. They actually have depth for the first time in I don't know how long.
You mentioned Hassan Reddick. Eagles bring him in. This is a guy, he's got 34 quarterback hits and 23.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, and this is another one where the defensive coordinator must account for this player. This guy, it's his job to free him up to rush the passer. You don't want to. Remember when Sean McDermott, who's turned out to be a great head coach, by the way, but remember when Sean McDermott was the Eagles D coordinator? He tried to do too much, and he's dropping ends in the coverage too much, and there was too much going on. Don't junk it up. Let guys who are specialists like Reddick. The Panthers talking to them. They rarely asked him to handle coverage. He's just not comfortable with it. He was able to rush the passer, and he's terrific at it. As long as Gannon uses him as mainly a pass rusher, this will turn out to be a very good signing.
Let's hit up the secondary here, Adam. A couple more before we let you go. Yep. We know that James Bradbury is an upgrade over Steven Nelson on paper, but how is he an upgrade on the field?
Well, here's the thing. Josh, first of all, he's bigger physically. He's 2 to 3 inches taller. He's longer. He runs better. I understand that he's a little bit older, Well, actually, I shouldn't say that much older. In fact, if you look at Bradbury's age, I think he's 28. He's actually younger than Steve. I think they're around the same age, within a year of each other. Now, Bradbury does turn 29. That's not old. He has 2 or 3 years left in him, and he's on a 1-year deal with upside to $10 million. He's going to make just over $7 million. He's got everything you want in talent. He didn't fit in their scheme last year. Yes, it was a down year for him. He'll fit in well here. They know how they want to use him. He's a major upgrade. He's way more talented than Steven Nelson. Steven Nelson has got by smarts and toughness and physicality, but you're not going to be limited by James Bradbury. In fact, when they go to man, I know he's not as comfortable. He's better playing off the ball. You can play mirror match coverage. There's certain things you can do with him. They wanted to play more mirror match last year, but they didn't because they didn't have depth. But I'm telling you, Bradbury is going to be a big upgrade. He's going to help them. There's no question about it. You just got to make sure that he's comfortable opposite Darius Slay.
When I saw that the Eagles signed Jaquiski Tartt this offseason, Adam, all I could think of was there's another Howie Roseman bargain basement deal guy who can impact this team. Yeah,
when we reported the numbers, I mean it's very close to Anthony Harris's deal. Harris's has a little bit more upside. They're both they can make up to $2.5 million. And in fact, ironically, I don't know if the Eagles are calling it, but I'm going to call it. It's a competition in training camp. I know Greg Cosell told us he thinks Tartt will beat him out in training camp, which is a little bit surprising. Actually, you know what? I don't know if he'll be able to get it done that quickly because remember, Harris is here because of Gannon. But they absolutely have to get someone to push Harris. He did not play particularly well last season, very average. Tartt's a better football player. He's just had a ton of injuries in his career. And that is why at 30 years old, the Niners did not want him back.
Competition's always a good thing in training camp. And Adam Caplan, NFL Insider, Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, at Caplan NFL. He will be at Eagles training camp tomorrow to start his training camp tour, and we will check in with him again tomorrow for football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. Adam, great stuff today. Talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thanks.